Good morning. It's Wednesday, the 3rd of June. Greetings from a wet and windy Northumberland. It even rains here. Today, my thoughts, and I guess the thoughts of most of us, will be mixed between the ongoing situation that we face as a country and as a world, dealing with the COVID pandemic, and the fears and uncertainties about this, which are not changed in any way. And also, our thoughts will be with the American people, and particularly those people in America who feel oppressed, who feel fearful, and whose fear and anger has erupted in violence after the terrible events that we witnessed last week. And normally I try to avoid politics. I'm a political being in some ways, but I try to avoid politics in these talks and really talk about what's in our human hearts and our relationship with God. But actually, politics is part of that. And the church in America has led the world really in objecting, in crying out, in anger and frustration at a picture of the president holding a Bible rather strangely, posing in front of a church, when we know that for him to get there, people who were injured in the problems there, people who were being cared for, were cleared from the area for this photo call to take place, this bizarre photo call where someone who many people think is part of the real problem of injustice stands there with a Bible. And I'm not going to go into that much more, but because I'm an oldish man, my thoughts went back to to how we find this offensive and why we find this offensive. And of course it's because we're Christians. We know that in the words of Scripture we find peace and healing and reconciliation. That in the words of Jesus in the New Testament and in the prophets, we find this idea that God does not want and does not tolerate the ways in which we act. I was caused to go back to something that I just about remember. Martin Luther King, over 50 years ago, nearer 60 years ago, his campaigns in the early 1960s and the great march to Washington, and his famous speech, "I Have a Dream." And the important thing that I want to bring out is that his speech is rooted, and I believe the whole Black Lives Matter movement, and indeed the response to it and the support to it for many people, is rooted in our Christian faith. Let me remind you of what Martin Luther King said. I won't read it all because you'd be here till 7 o'clock. This is what he said as part of that speech. "I have a dream today. I have a dream that every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be plain, and the crooked places made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it." Martin Luther King is speaking from Scripture and saying that justice, that freedom, that equality is the scriptural picture, and that his march, that his speech, and that the hopes and aspirations of Afro-American people in the 1960s and in the 2020s find their roots in Christianity. Remember, it is in Christianity, it is in the message of Jesus, that these whole concepts of justice, of compassion, of care are found. So how do we respond to it? Well, we can read and learn and inform ourselves about the injustices. But of course, the thing we can most of all do is open our hearts to the changing and transforming power of God. Because justice and compassion and equality begins with us. If I look at one person as being intrinsically more important than another, then I am committing injustice. If I consider myself to be intrinsically more important than another, I am committing injustice. Society, community, fellowship, care for the poor, nursing the weak, lifting up the fallen, are all part of our Christian witness. And so as we look from afar, but feel the ripples of the terrible events happening in America, we must challenge ourselves and our own attitudes and the way in which we look at and treat others, so that every valley may be lifted up, every crooked path made straight, and the glory of the Lord will be revealed, and all people will see it. May God bless us today.